Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Nicola Donnelly, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Air Commodore Paul Dighton. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony from across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you are able, please stand in joining singing the National Anthem. If you require a seat, please be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in far places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths of floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Lowes Henry Skyring. Lowes was born on the 30th of October 1896 in Bundaberg, Queensland. He was the middle child and only son of Thomas and Emma Skyring. Lowes attended the boys' grammar school in Rockhampton and then found work as a clerk in Gladstone. He was also a member of the Port Curtis Infantry Citizen Forces. In March 1915, Lowes' older sister Mildred died suddenly from an illness, aged only 19. Lowes Skyring enlisted in the Australian Imperial Force on the 29th of July 1915, aged 18 years and 9 months. He was assigned to the 12th Reinforcements for the 2nd Light Horse Field Ambulance at the rank of private. After 5 months of initial training in Australia, Lowes left Sydney in HMAT Subic on the 20th of December 1915, bound for Egypt. Private Skyring arrived in Egypt in late January 1916 and joined the rest of the 12th Reinforcements in training at Mardi Camp. On the 24th of February, he left Mardi for Serapeum, where he was taken on strength of the 2nd Australian Light Horse Field Ambulance. Shortly after joining, Lowes was admitted to the field ambulance as a patient suffering from mumps. He was discharged to duty a week later. In early April, the field ambulance left camp to join the 2nd Light Horse Brigade in the Sinai Desert, where they were involved in defending the Suez Canal from Ottoman advances. The ambulance provided second-line casualty evacuation for the 2nd Light Horse Brigade, extracting casualties from the battle area and transporting them to advanced dressing stations away from the battle. As a result, they participated in the Battle of Romani in August 1916, playing an instrumental role in transporting wounded men to safety. The field ambulance advanced into Palestine in late December 1916 as part of the Anzac Mounted Division. They accompanied the 2nd Light Horse Brigade in Palestine throughout late 1917. Following the fall of Gaza in November 1917, the 2nd Light Horse Brigade and Field Ambulance moved to operations in the Jordan Valley. At the end of March 1918, the ambulance was moving from Swilly to Essolt, transporting wounded to the new position. The difficult terrain caused heavy delays as camels carrying wounded men became bogged. A handful of men from the ambulance, including Lowes, were left behind to wait with the wounded until riders with spare horses and sand carts could collect them. By mid-morning on the 1st of April, the majority of the wounded and accompanying men from the ambulance had made their way into the Allied lines at Essolt, despite having been fired on by the Ottoman enemy. The remaining patients, along with 3 members of the field ambulance, never reached Essolt and were reported as missing. One of these men was Lowes Skyring. Initially, the fate of Lowes and the other 2 men was uncertain. On the 20th of April, the 3 men were awarded military medals and their families were notified. However, this award was then cancelled when it was confirmed that the men had been captured by the Ottomans and taken to Turkey. Lieutenant Colonel J.R. McBeath of the 2nd Light Horse Field Ambulance wrote to Lowes' mother that Lowes was very probably a prisoner in the hands of the Turks. He assured her that medical personnel were typically very well treated and that his work with this unit has always been excellent. In Turkey, Lowes was put to work at Jelibek in the Taurus Mountains on the Berlin to Baghdad railway line. Fellow British prisoner of war, Sergeant W. Bramble, wrote to his father in May 1918, explaining that an Australian chap here, a very nice boy indeed, an only son, is greatly worried because his letters home take something like 5 or 6 months to reach Australia, and he greatly fears for his mother's anxiety. Bramble asked his father to cable Lowe's mother directly to tell her that her son was all right. Conditions were difficult for prisoners at Jellibec. Lowe's contracted malaria and dysentery and was briefly hospitalised. A month later, he was transferred from Jellibec to a fine Kara Hissar for less taxing work. From there, Lowe's wrote to the Australian Red Cross, asking them to reassure his mother that he was well, despite being a prisoner. But this was not really true. On the 1st of August, he was admitted to hospital in camp, suffering from enteric fever. The camp was run by British prisoners of war, and Lowe's received the best possible treatment while he was there. His fever developed into bronchopneumonia, and his health rapidly deteriorated. Lowe's Skyring died of disease on the 9th of August 1918 at a fine Kara Hissar. He was 21 years old. Writing to the Red Cross, Trooper Young from the 7th Light Horse Regiment explained that Lowe's had not known that he was dying and was in good spirits all the way to the end. Lowe's was buried by a Methodist minister in the Armenian cemetery at a fine Kara Hissar. In 1927, as part of efforts to consolidate the graves of prisoners of war across the Ottoman Empire, Lowe's body was exhumed and reinterred in Baghdad North Gate War Cemetery. His name is also listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Lowe's Henry Skyring, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
Lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozieres or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support during the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.